All right. It looks to me that we have like a healthy number of people here. And so I'll say that we can get started and people can continue to join us as they are able. And I want to say a huge welcome and thank you to the 3 alums that we have on this call today. I'll introduce them briefly with just kind of their names, their class years, and their roles right now. But as we continue this conversation, they'll share more about kind of where they've been and where their post-Wellesley journey has taken them. What we will do is I have sort of 5 questions that I'll ask all of them, and we'll answer them in order, and then we'll get to your questions at the end. And we'll have a good conversation. So to start off with, we have Ann Dickinson Meltz, class of 2016. She's currently a product designer or product manager, sorry, at Wayfair. And then we also have Elizabeth Good, class of 2009, who's the manager of tech talent development at Wayfair. And then also joining us is Hayden Broberg, class of 2014, who's the vice president of partnerships at Insurify. And so we've got a good range of people who have experienced various aspects of tech-related roles and what it looks like to be non-technical in tech. And so our first question, we'll start with, if you could just share sort of like what are 1 or 2 highlights of your journey from Wellesley to where you are? And I'll just also add, since we've highlighted this as sort of non-tech and tech, if you could also share what you studied at Wellesley, and maybe how that factors into what you've been doing. And so we'll start with Ann in that conversation.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. It's really exciting to be here. This is, I think, my first Wellesley panel where I'm on the other side of things. So I'm having flashbacks to when I was at Wellesley, listening to stuff like this. So I was a sociology and education. I was a sociology major and an education minor at Wellesley. I also dabbled in a bunch of other things because I had that classic kind of major identity crisis thing that people go through. But that's what I ended up focusing on. In terms of the broad strokes of my career, the first internship that I got while I was at Wellesley was when I legitimately was in that phase of not knowing anything that I wanted to do. So I thought about what would be fun. And I got an internship as a wedding planner. That kind of led me into the events side of marketing, which gave me both kind of insight into what event planning looks like at a more of a business setting, and then also like what marketing is like at a company. That was really kind of good in terms of gaining experience in a more corporate setting and learning that I really liked being creative, that I really liked being people oriented and being organized, but knew that that wasn't quite right for me. So then I found myself at a tech consultancy as an intern through college, and then went back after college. It was a small tech consultancy, which is kind of a cool different side of tech, where if you're at a smaller startup or company, then you get to do a little bit of everything. So my role ended up being director of operations, but I did like basically everything other than code there. Anything that wasn't the CEO and wasn't engineering, that was kind of within my purview. I found myself really gravitating towards product, but realized that product was and would always be kind of just a small fraction of the stuff that I spent time on, which is kind of why I started to look at product manager roles and ended up at Wayfair. So I've been at Wayfair for about 2 years now, working primarily on their apps.
Great, and then we'll go on to Elizabeth.
Awesome. So I studied political science and Spanish at Wellesley. And if you had asked me 10 years ago now what I would be doing, I would absolutely like be, you know, the chief of staff for some high power elected official, which is obviously not what I'm doing, working in tech. I graduated in 2009, which you might recall from the history books, was in the middle of like a little bit of a recession. And so I took the job that came to me, which was doing political organizing and fundraising in Portland, Oregon. I was raised in Boston, so that was like fundamentally wild to go out there. But what I realized out there was I loved the people part of the organizing and less loved the politics and kind of insanity of campaign life. And so when my time in Portland came to a close and I got sick of being far from family and sick of the rain there, I worked in public events and programming for the Rose Kennedy Greenway, which is right downtown Boston. So I worked there for a while. And there I kind of continued to understand what I liked and didn't like, but found myself continuing to be drawn toward people. I made not a ton of money at a nonprofit. And so to supplement that, worked at a restaurant, realized I really liked that. Managed a restaurant for 2 years, which you might think is a crazy jump, but really just helped me understand more about people and who they are and how they work and the things that make them tick. And I also learned a ton about food and wine and running a small business. So I was the general manager of a business making about $2 million a year. And I was responsible for all of the decisions at 25, 26, which is pretty cool. When I decided I wanted to see my soon-to-be spouse more, who is Wellesley class of 2010, I looked for a job in more of a 9-to-5 setting, but continuing to really focus on people. That led me to tech. So I started at Hubspot in my tech career, doing culture and employee experience. And that's when I realized that like tech was so much more than just what you see, like people behind computers and folks talking about marketing, right? So I worked there for a couple of years, really working on like employee experience and kind of the ins and outs of what we think of as culture. So events and programming and fun things and all that, but was drawn a little bit more to like the learning side of things. So moved over to Wayfair, where I work closely with Anne, and I manage our tech talent development programming. So that's basically anyone who walks through the door as a technical employee. How do we get them ready for their job and how do we keep them happy and growing as they're there? So yeah, basically people is the thread. And I'm happy to chat later more about how I made that work for me, but yeah. Oh, you're muted still.
Francis, I think you're muted, or you are muted.
I was just gonna say, we're gonna go on to you, so.
Cool. Elizabeth, that's awesome. Would like to know what restaurant you worked in. I'm a big Boston foodie.
I was at the butcher shop.
Oh my gosh, I love her restaurant.
Yeah, she's great. She's fantastic.
I recently just got her donuts. She's offering her little beignets, but yeah. Anyway, so my name is Hayden. I am class of 2014. I actually knew Anne pretty well in college. We were in one of the societies together, which is really fun to be a part of this and you know be a part of the general Wellesley siblinghood is awesome to see everyone here. So I had an interesting track as well. I was a poli-sci and film double major, cinema and media studies. If you'd asked me, similar to what Elizabeth said, if you'd asked me what I was going to do, I would have probably told you I'd be in LA working in film, or I would also be doing some sort of awesome political work. And I've done none of that. So my sophomore year at Wellesley, I went to the career services and I said, well, what the heck am I going to do as a poli-sci person? I'm probably not going to go and make movies right now. And I had an opportunity to work at a company called Value Retail in London as a marketing intern on their group retail services. So essentially, Value Retail owns property throughout the world and leases it out to luxury designers. I was like, I like clothes, I like retail, I like business, let me do this. From there, I essentially had 2 offers for my junior summer, either working at Lockheed Martin or JP Morgan. Similar time period, I don't know if you all remember it, but we were also in another financial crisis. So there was a sequester that happened. So all military funding went down. So then my parents said, well, would you like to not have a job potentially, or do you want to for sure have a job? And I said, okay, I will sell my soul for a year, work for JP Morgan, which is what I did. I have no regrets in my decision to work for JP Morgan. It was one of the hardest years of my life. It's very stressful, but it really did build the analytical foundation that I use today and my frame of reference for being professional today. It is a hell of a boot camp, but if any of you are considering taking an experience where you've not had like a hard science as a background, like an economics or a math, I would highly recommend evaluating the opportunity to go into finance and develop that framework and how you can approach problem solving in the future. So from there, I was an investment analyst at JP Morgan. On my year anniversary, I decided to start looking for other jobs. And I found a cool role in Boston at a ride sharing company, of which I was running their operations team, built up a team of about 8 team members running their network and route optimizations for ride sharing company. Then I met an amazing CEO, a badass woman founder, fell in love with her, fell in love with the vision, and joined Insurify a little over 2.5 years ago, and have grown into running their partnerships program. So there I focus on the monetization of both sides of the funnel. So essentially, Insurify is a marketplace, less familiar than with Wayfair. So let me just explain what we do. We've created a marketplace for insurance. So if you want to buy home, life, auto, renters, pet, you come to Insurify, you can compare rates. So my team is in charge of nurturing, growing our insurance carrier relationships. And then I also run our team to acquire traffic. So think of performance marketing. I'm happy to go into more details with that, but it's a people job, similar to what Elizabeth said, but it's also very analytical. So tech is not just about being an engineer or being a product person. You can come at it with a frame of what's best for the business, what data can I look at, and how can I iterate on different ideas I might have. So that's what I do.
That's awesome. Thank you all so much for sharing that sort of like overview of your experience and your work. My next question is, could you share kind of like what brings you the most joy about your work right now? And we'll go back to starting with Anne.
Yeah, so I realized as we were going through that it might be helpful to like quickly go over kind of what is product, because at least when I was at Wellesley, I didn't know that product was a career path. So it boiled down, product management is basically you work with your cross-functional squad of analysts, engineers, designers, product, you're part of the squad, and product design. And then you also kind of bring with it customer insights, and then insights about the business to decide what to build and how to build it. So that's kind of like the essence of it. I think the thing that brings me the most joy about it, there's a lot that brings me a lot of joy about it, but one of the things that really resonated with me when I was kind of making that career transition about 2 years kind of out of college, when I was thinking, what did I want to do next, was that the metrics for success are inherently kind of grounded in what makes people happy or what's good for our customers. That really resonated with me kind of as a way to sort of drive forward and decide what to build and how to build it. I think that was really refreshing for me. I didn't like realize that in a business context that could be so valuable and such a motivator. I think like the other pieces are a lot to do with like what Elizabeth and Hayden were saying around working with people and being kind of the people side of tech. I also just really like the fact that tech, for better or worse, but I love it, has a tendency to kind of move fast, iterate, learn quickly, be okay with failure, learn from your mistakes, those sorts of things. Really kind of resonated with me. So those are a few of the things that I really find joy in.
Awesome, thank you. And Elizabeth.
Yeah, similar to Anne, I think one of the things I love about my role is that I get to advocate for my customer, right? So my customer actually isn't you all who may shop at Wayfair. My customer is the Wayfair engineer, the Wayfair tech employee, and I get to advocate for what is going to make their experience better. And so that's really exciting, right? It comes in all forms. I get to advocate for building diverse and inclusive environments that help them thrive. I get to advocate for bringing in the best external technology to help them grow. I get to advocate for giving them space to do work, right? Helping people understand when people work best and when people don't. It's a really fascinating topic right now, as many of us are remote. How do we encourage our teams to really foster inclusive and understanding working practices when not everyone is going to be able to be on a traditional schedule? So I just like that I can understand and work with every day the customer that I'm serving. And for me, it's the engineers and the tech team.
Fantastic, thank you. And Hayden, what brings you joy?
So mine was originally also that I get to work with a lot of different types of people. So I'll hit that quickly and then go to another one because it sounds like we're all saying the same thing. I work at a really small company. So we've been lucky to have secured a Series A in January, thank God, because right now, as everyone knows, funding for startups is not great. So we raised $26 million in January with 12 employees. Since then, we've grown to over 20. And my favorite part of the job is that I am in an interesting spot that I get to work with every single team at Insurify. I get to work with the engineers and the developers. I get to work with the product folks like Anne. I get to work with our SEO team. I get to work with our finance team and our data science team. And that is unique to the specific partnerships role because we have multiple stakeholders in executing on different visions. Because I work so closely with the product team and how I can deliver them the highest monetizing partner and ensure that I'm analyzing it properly, I have to work with the data science team. I have to work with the product team. I work with the finance team, which is cool. But I would say on a macro level, my role is really unique and exciting because I get to explore, similar to a venture capitalist, I get to explore a bunch of different industries and a bunch of different people and see if there's a way that I can sell into their own ecosystem. So imagine your banking app. I'm able to go into any app that gets ahead of someone and I can approach them for a partnership where I can monetize their users. So your Bank of America app says, use this coupon to get 10% off of so-and-so. Any opportunity that there is, I'm talking to those partners, and I can't think of another role where I get to focus externally and internally on different stakeholders and people.
Awesome, thank you. So our next question talks about what is something that has surprised you about your career? And if I could add on a little bit, like specifically in being sort of like a non-technical person in tech.
Yeah, I think there's surprising things that kind of come up all the time. So in some ways they're sort of like, what is the lens through which you're looking at the surprise? But I think one of the things that if I were my college self kind of looking ahead that I think is unexpected is how rewarding I find my job and how much I love it. I think when I was at Wellesley, I had this kind of idea that I don't know if it was like absorbed or if it was kind of like self-imposed that if I didn't become a teacher, then I wouldn't have a fulfilling career or something like that. And I think realizing that I can I love my job and I still feel like I'm kind of making a difference within my own community, just in different ways. That's kind of been really, really cool to experience and grow and learn from. I guess a quick example is one way that I sort of like bring my education studies minor kind of into Wayfair is I'm really involved. This is how Elizabeth and I kind of sometimes work together is I'm really involved in the onboarding program, creating the curriculum for new product managers who come into Wayfair, what they like go through and learn to kind of get up to speed. So I guess there's a lot of different ways to tap into the things that you're passionate about and that motivate you, regardless kind of the career you go in.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I am constantly surprised by is I think I felt for a long time that having a liberal arts education means that I was pigeonholed into this like soft skills, right? So I'm really good at people. I'm really good at projects. I'm the one who's always tasked with like throwing the party, which is great, right? I love all those things. But sometimes I think I let them hold me back from really being like an executor and a data-driven person. And at Wayfair, right, it's my job to advocate for people, which can sometimes seem very wishy-washy. But what we really know now is people are our potential for profit, right? To make it like not quite as awful to say, but like they're the driving force behind what makes the business work, right? If people aren't happy, we're not going to have a successful company. And for me, the way that my role in keeping folks happy is helping them continue to learn and grow. And so learning how to advocate for people from a data-driven perspective really surprised me that I got to do both. I got to like really help people understand the human side of technology and of work, the human side of work in general. It was great, right? I got to still kind of fulfill that, like what I call kind of like a karma bank, right? Like putting good out into the world and seeing it return to you, but also help people see the numbers behind that if their brains didn't necessarily line up with the way that I think about things. So that was really surprising. I never thought I'd be able to figure out a way to bring those two things together.
Yeah, I would say the most surprising thing for me was when to someone's earlier point, I think it was Anne's, that there are jobs outside of what I thought existed. At Wellesley, I was so focused on getting that consulting internship, getting that banking internship, getting that high profile experience I thought I needed. I did not even see partnerships, a business analyst, a product role, a talent role. I had no idea these even existed because recruiters were coming to our campus from Goldman Sachs, Chase. I think like we had some nonprofits, but very rarely did we get a tech company coming there to say, hey, like there are roles for operations people. Are you super organized and you get shit done? Here. I didn't even know that existed. So I would say that one of the most surprising things that I've experienced in my career is there's literally a lid for every pot. And if you're really good at throwing parties, organizing things, bringing people together, maybe you're really good at working by yourself, you're really good with numbers, maybe you're really good at interpreting, reading comprehension is your thing. Like there are jobs for you that you can succeed really well in. And even to that extent, one of the surprising things that I've learned, especially over the past, I'd say 5 years of my career, is how to communicate with every type of person. So you'll become really familiar with, I'm sure Anne and Elizabeth are familiar with this, like engineers communicate differently than someone might on the SEO content team. And how can I best deliver my messages to them and receive a result that both of us are happy with in the same way I do with every other team. So learning how to work together with different types of people for different roles has been really, really surprisingly fun and also hard and exciting.
Awesome. That's all really great information. I'm mindful that sometimes when we talk about our alum stories, we often give the highlight reel of here are all of the amazing things I've done, which is true. Like we are very accomplished. But could you tell us about a time in your career when you struggled or that you had to face a challenge and maybe make it through in a way that wasn't sort of like neat and clean, but could have been messy at times?
Yeah. So I was thinking about that. There's definitely a bunch. I think one of the biggest ones for me was when I decided to move from my last company, that's tech consultancy, into product at Wayfair, because what you don't see are the 6 months in between when I was, one, deliberating on what to do, and then two, applying to so many roles and not hearing back from a lot. You know, you apply to a lot of roles and you don't hear back from a lot. They're just, it's like a black hole sometimes. And then the interview process, right? And kind of going through that, all you hear about is, oh, I realized that I didn't want to be at that role anymore. And then I ended up at Wayfair. So I think one thing that I realized, or have realized, because I've had, my littles have graduated now and what have you, that there tends to be kind of a year out, maybe 2 years out of college, like career crisis moment that a lot of people tend to have. And I think, I guess, one, for all of you, if that happens, be like, oh, that got it. Like, remember this moment, be like, this is what she was talking about. Because what I realized at that time is we were all having these like crises, but not really talking about it. Because we were, you know, doing work and stuff. So talk about it. But anyways, sorry, back to the struggle. I think like a few things that helped me through it that I think I want to pass on. One is you hear time and time again that career pivots are totally possible. They are, but they're not easy, and nobody ever told me that. And the reason why they aren't easy is because whenever you're applying to your next role, they're looking for your experience that will cater to that role. So what you need to do as an applicant, and it took me like probably a few too many iterations of my cover letter and interviewing and whatever to realize this, is even if your past role is like, you know, a pie, you know, it's huge and you're doing all these different things and you're really proud of this work that you've done, it's okay if all you talk about is one slice of the pie that's actually relevant to that role. And that's how a career pivot is possible, is by highlighting a certain experience that's relevant, and then you can pivot. So I think that's one of the big things that helped me when I was like struggling, because it was a long time of interviewing and figuring out getting this new role. And the other thing that helped is reaching out to people even with the explicit purpose of saying, I'm trying to figure out what to do next, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. I think it's really good to reach out to mentors and alums and whatever. I do think it's really important to do that with a very targeted ask, rather than just like, I just want to pick your brain and hear your story. Instead, say like, I am in a career pivot right now and I'm really trying to figure out what's next. And you might have a role that I'm interested in. Can I learn about your role, share some of my strengths, and see if this is a fit or something like that? I think that it took me way too long to reach out to people just for help with that guidance. And it was actually ended up being a Wellesley alum, my best friend's mom, who talked to me, and she was the one like, and you're looking at every single role under the sun, because I was literally looking at every role like, oh, I could do this or I could do that. Like it was a mess. And she was the one who kind of listened to the things that I liked, listened to the things that I was good at, and was like, okay, you and I think should go after product, and here's why. Because sometimes the people in your life, mentors, can tell you things about yourself better than you can when everything feels like spaghetti and out of control. So I guess the two things are reaching out to people, even to just like get advice on what you should do next, and then two, the pivot kind of advice around like take one experience and use that as the like I guess the vertex to pivot or something.
Yeah, to piggyback on Anne's kind of like, how do you pivot and what do you do? I have this like dream of like a career thesaurus of like Wellesley alums, right? Like you did this in this industry and here's how we talk about it in this industry, right? Like there really should just be like 10 or 20 words that we use to describe skills, but instead we have these super specific skills or super specific words that we use to describe the same skills. And so that's the challenge that I've had, right? When I like jump from job to job, I think it's basically been the same job, right? Like I've done the same thing. I've improved my skills around people, but people look at my resume and they're like nonprofit, politics, restaurants, tech. Like, how does this come together? And so lean on people whose jobs you admire outside of the industries you're looking into. How do they talk about their jobs? And definitely tailor your resumes. Like, I'm not saying embellish, but like tailoring is not embellishing. Tailoring is focused and it's strategic, and you should do it. And you really hit on all of my struggles around the pivot. I recently went through like a quite public career struggle around the Wayfair walkout. So if you aren't familiar, Wayfair recently was in the news quite a bit because they sold beds to a nonprofit that was furnishing some of the camps along the border. I was part of an employee group that raised the concern, and that led to a walkout, which led to a lot of press, which led to me having to lean into like everything that I learned from Wellesley of like, how do you calm and direct a bunch of really smart, engaged people to like do one thing at the same time? And it was really scary, right? Like I was forced to think about what my professional goals were and my professional feelings versus my personal and political and kind of like moral focus. And I think for me, what I took away from that was that I don't have to compromise if I'm willing to be strategic. And that meant gathering all those people together, all those very passionate, very smart, very driven people, and saying, okay, we need to agree upon a mission and a goal and a conversation point, and then being that conversation point and having those conversations with leadership. I was like fully convinced I was gonna be walked out the door. And instead, what I realized is that I don't have to let a challenge dictate, what like my understanding of an outcome doesn't have to be what happens, right? I can leave it up to other people to decide what happens if I put everything I know to be true on the table. So I guess for me, it was a big moment of, just because I work within a corporate and publicly traded and well-known company, it doesn't mean that I have to, thanks, Anne. It doesn't mean that I have to sacrifice my value set. And because of it, not only do I think like good has come to Wayfair, but I also think that people have started to understand that they don't just have to go along with things if they're uncomfortable, and how do you like start to raise your hand. So if you take away anything from that, just know that you will all continue to be very, very motivated and talented people. And I hope that you bring people along with you who feel the same way and think the same way, and then inevitably you can affect change regardless of where you are, in very different ways. So that's me.
I could listen to a TED Talk about that. That was very, Very cool. My biggest struggle as of late has been, in my last 2 roles, has been how can I have the confidence in my ability to manage others? So I have been put in the situation, which is a fabulous career move, to be given the opportunity to lead a team. And how do I battle my internal imposter syndrome, which we're all tired of hearing about, but is very real for me? How do I recognize, silence that, and then move on? So I've managed people that are older than myself, have, maybe a more seasoned career, but I've been given the chance by leadership to lead them. And that's been a big struggle of mine, which is having the confidence that I didn't just stumble into the job, and I didn't just by chance be given an opportunity, I earned it, and reaffirming that with myself, while staying humble. But it's a very common feeling to have in business, that you just fell into a role. And how do you fight that? And that's something that I, seek literature about, I talk to my family about, I talk to my friends about, and everyone hits it. But finding ways that you don't let it impact your own career or the interpersonal relationships you may have in the office is really important. And I don't have a solution. So if you all have a solution, let me know. I don't have it, I can't offer it, but it exists.
Awesome, thank you. So I'm at to the end of my pre-prepared questions. So this is one more reminder to the group that if you have questions that you want the alums to hear or answer, feel free to add them to the chat. But my last question is, what is some of the best advice that you've received, and what advice would you share with current students now, knowing that we're in a really unique time? There's some additional challenges in terms of looking for internships or looking for new jobs. What would you share to today's student?
Okay, the first thing is a book recommendation that somebody recommended to me, so I'm gonna recommend it to you. It's called Designing Your Life. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's great. It's a great book for figuring out career stuff because it has activities. So, it's engaging and fun. And I think it does a really good job of helping you kind of like step back, recognize the things you're good at, the things you like, the things that give you energy, all that good stuff. And it kind of helps you think. I was never the type of person who had a 5-year plan, or for sure not a 10-year plan. So this is a good way of thinking about career goals without thinking that you need to do kind of like, first I'm going to do this and then this and then this. So that's that. The things that I wish I had known, there's a few things. I guess one thing is to think broadly about what's possible. I got it in my head that that I just wasn't going to kind of get roles, which is like such a bad mentality. So I ended up, I think I don't have any regrets, but I think part of the reason why I ended up at the role that I did after college is because frankly, I was too scared to look at other things. So don't be too scared to look at other things, but also at the same time, don't wait for something to just kind of fall in your lap. Actively, like, cause actually that's a thing that people do, literally. I've had, my littles and stuff go through career stuff, and they're like, I don't know what to do, I'm not getting an internship. And I'm like, how many of you applied to? And they're like, 3. And that's like not enough. So I guess think broadly about what's possible and then go after those things. Don't get paralyzed by all the different things out there. And then also just kind of advice that I wish I'd known about reaching out to alums, because I've had a few Wellesley students now like reach out to me on LinkedIn or what have you, or even recent Wellesley alums reach out to me, is go into it kind of with a stated goal in mind for why you're chatting with the alum, because it's really helpful. It's really helpful on the receiving end to know what that person wants out of the conversation, because otherwise in a half hour's time, what's going to happen is the student says something like, so tell me about your entire career from Wellesley to here. And then you spend the entire time talking, but what they really wanted was advice on how to pivot from one thing into product. So that's some of the things. Yeah, that's most of the stuff that I wish I had known.
All of those things are fantastic. I feel like Anne just like is pre-reading my brain for things I want to say, but it's okay. I have extra now. I was taking notes. So my big one, and this is not applicable in every single place, but in most places it's true. Titles are free. Okay. So if you are doing a job and you are like, I think that it might look better my next step, or I've seen other people in my industry doing the same thing, have this title, just ask for it, right? Like work with your manager, work with your director, design the title that makes you excited to tell other people about your role, right? I went from being like, I forget what, I think my role at the Greenway was like event coordinator. And I went and I was like, what if we called it like public programs and like partnerships manager? And did I get paid more? No, probably should have asked her that too. But I felt more confident in describing what I was doing to people because it really felt like it was what I was doing. So titles are free. That's one. Apply for the job, right? It's free to apply for jobs. So apply for the job, put the effort in, and like, don't just willy-nilly send things off and not tailor them. But if you don't feel like you meet 100% of the qualifications, still apply for it, right? We've all seen that gender breakdown, like men apply for jobs and they think they meet 60% of the requirements, and women apply when they think they meet 100%. So just do it, just apply for the job. The last piece of advice I think is to figure out how to attach a value to the emotional labor you do in the office. And that's something that I know I mentioned earlier, like I tend to gravitate toward things like employee resource groups, right? I did far too many things at Wellesley, right? I played rugby, I was in ZA, I did radio, I was in the hoop. Like if I could do it, I did it. And I find myself doing that at work too, because I like it. But then it sort of looks like maybe I'm pulled in a lot of directions. I don't have a way to describe the impact that has on the business. What we're seeing is more businesses are getting strategic around those types of activities and really putting some effort and money behind them. But until that happens for your organization, if that's something you enjoy doing, absolutely raise your hand and do it, but be very clear with why you're doing it and how you want to have impact. Because sometimes we can see that it can be used against you, right? Like, oh, you spent too much time on X. Well, actually, my work with the LGBTQ resource group is helping drive Y result for the business. So that's a huge one. And it's definitely when we see like folks new to their career and especially folks who've been re-socialized, identify as women kind of fall into. So highly recommend doing that.
Awesome. Okay. A lot of what I was also going to say has been said. One that goes off of my struggles that I've identified, my primary struggle that I'm dealing with now is that when you're given the chance to succeed or rise above or do something that's uncomfortable, don't second guess yourself. Don't second guess why you got that. I mean, ask them why you've been given that opportunity, but don't second guess their judgment or why you have that chance. One of the biggest things that, and of course there's like a line that can be drawn in what I'm about to say, but especially as an intern, as a first year analyst, or in any role where you're first starting out, never say no. If someone asks you to do something, you say yes. Obviously, there is some lines that shouldn't be crossed, but within reason, if someone asks you to do the extra work, to dig deeper into something, and maybe it's not comfortable, I mean, maybe it's difficult or you struggle with it, or you don't want to stay late because your friends are going out to a cool bar, do it. Stay late, put in the work, you will be rewarded. Someone will see you, it will pay off. Third piece, always make the ask. Similar to what Elizabeth said, with titles are free. You want something, you better do it. As Michael Scott once said, you miss every shot you don't take. You've got it, you just do it. The worst that can happen is they say no, but they actually, it shows gumption. It shows that you're thinking critically. It's showing that you have the ambition. Fourth, be really comfortable with getting uncomfortable. Serious career pivots, career moves, progression is really awkward and uncomfortable. Maybe your role is not defined, but you get promoted. It's good to be uncomfortable. It's where we all learn and grow. Finally, and this is like the most Wellesley thing in the world, but use your network. When you do, show up. There are so many times that I've been with Wellesley people and booked time to talk and I've been blown off. I have to tell you that we alums remember this. And it's happened to a bunch of people in my network with Wellesley grads. So knowing that, show up and also follow up. So you have that phone call that alum spent 30 minutes with you, you better be shooting them that email to say thank you and what you learned and what you're going to do. Also on that, be annoying, be a pest. So here's how I'm going to answer one of the questions that someone just asked. What are some skills I developed in college I use today? I'm annoying. I'm a really great pest. I push people. I was social chair longer than anyone else was in my society. Anne can tell you this. I am very good at networking. Don't be afraid to ask people for what you want. You want to arrange a party? Arrange a party. You want a new business development? Go hit them up on LinkedIn. Call their cell phone. Email them. Call them. LinkedIn them. Do it all the time. You're not annoying. You're persistent.
That was so good. I was like +1ing to everything that you just said, both of you. But yeah, the follow-up especially snaps to that. Francis, how do you want to do these questions? Do you want us to each tackle all of them together, or should we go through one by one?
Well, so let's continue on since Hayden started with the skills question, let's continue with that one. And I think we can couple it with the second question about how do you talk about those skills, the liberal arts education, because it's a real issue when you're kind of like quote unquote competing with those who maybe have specifically majored in the thing that you're looking to go into. So let's couple those two. Yeah.
Skills that I developed at Wellesley, frankly, resilience is one of the biggest things, and hard work. There's this funny thing that happens that I remember. It's not a thing anymore, but when I first graduated from Wellesley, a bunch of people who I knew from other schools were having these crises because they missed college so much. And they were like, not sure what to do in the real world when they had to work super hard. And I was like, what? We worked so hard at Wellesley. So like so many nights in like the science library and the other library. Oh my gosh. So I think one of the biggest things is you go through like boot camp at Wellesley on how to work super hard and produce really good results, and be dedicated to your work and thoughtful and what have you. So I think that's, I mean, it's a soft thing to say, but it's so true. And I guess to follow up on that, how do you show that? To be totally honest, nobody asks about the liberal arts thing after your first job, but that is super relevant to you because it's your first job. Even for your first job, I don't think anyone's going to say, tell me about the fact that you went to a liberal arts school, because in general, liberal arts grads are rampant. They are everywhere. So, you know, chances are you're interviewing with somebody who, if they didn't go to a liberal arts school, they know somebody who went to a liberal arts school. I think that insecurity about having a liberal arts education is more of a thing when you're in school because you're afraid of what you don't know than once you graduate. But with that said, advice for you on how to kind of like tailor your Wellesley experience towards a career is kind of similar to what we've all sort of said in terms of be specific about the things that you've done and how they're relevant to the role. So that can be anything from something you've done for a club or an org that you're involved in to some sort of like on-campus movement that you started, or it could be related to research. Either way, as long as you take whatever the role needs and put a lens on that experience that fits that role, then you're going to be fine. It's not about proving the liberal arts education in an interview. It's about kind of proving your experience is relevant in the interview.
Yeah, to piggyback on the experience thing, I'm going to also join Anne's book club. This book is fantastic. It's called Range. Why generalists triumph in a specialized world. So it should really be called like why liberal arts education is important. Because I do think that that's the way that you make the case, right? Like, no, I didn't spend all of my educational career in college studying one subject. I'm actually super capable of balancing a bunch of things at the same time, and often they're on completely different ends of the spectrum. And here's an example of how I did that, right? And that could be 2 educational topics. That could be your work and your study. That could be, you know, any myriad things that you've participated in. I also think that for me, like the skill that I consistently fall back on is just not being shy about being the loudest voice in the room. I'm used to it being someone who sounds like me, who might dress like me, who might share my experience. And so I think it's something that we hear often from folks from women's colleges, right? So like, oh, I was surprised when women weren't used to being or seeing a woman be the loudest in the room. And I just, that I continue to take away, and I get really excited when I get to lift other people up like that. This concept of like shine theory, or like helping other people, you know, echoing questions that are being asked by people who don't usually get their questions answered. That's the thing that I think I took away the most, and try and emulate every day for sure. But yeah, great book. I've been holding on to it because I can't return it to the library. I wish I could lend it out to one of you, but I can't.
So that's a really it's a good point, is that getting comfortable with identifying who you are and what makes you happy, and finding like the first job you have, maybe the second, maybe the third is not going to be the best job for you, but finding ways that you can pivot to what you're naturally good at, and don't put yourself within, you know, a square hole if you're a round shape. But so I actually did get asked a lot of times about liberal education, and I did get asked why am I applying to JP Morgan without a finance background? So that was a conversation I had a lot, because as I've expressed earlier, I was really laser focused on, I need the GPA, I need to get into McKinsey, I need to get BCG, I need to get Goldman, I need to get JP Morgan. That was what I was going for sophomore, junior. And senior, I was like, I'm done with it, have a job, see ya. So what I would say is, to Anne and Elizabeth's earlier point, when you have those conversations about what experience do you have with being analytical, what makes you analytical, if it's even just one class, and you talk about that one class the next 30 minutes. You are going to make lemonade out of that lemon and show them how analytical you are and what thought you put into that. It doesn't matter. Do not tell them it was one class. Just say it was like a certain experience you had and sell it. And you'll figure it out. Wellesley folks are very smart. You can figure it out. All of those jobs are like, you need a 3.6 in order to be there. And we recommend you having an econ background. And we recommend all of this. Baloney. You can do it. Sell it like it's hotcakes. So what I would say is definitely dig in and get laser focused on what that one experience you had. But then also, when they say liberal arts experience is different than, you know, studying accounting at University of Texas, you just say that, you know, you focus on your writing skills. You'd be surprised, and I'm sure definitely Elizabeth, if she's working in talent, can tell you that not everyone is a good writer, and it is shocking. So if you can sell that you're a good writer and you're able to really quickly understand not only data, but also your reading comprehension is high, that will pay off in spades.
Yeah, I love all of that advice. I think it's awesome to hear all of you talk about your experience and how that has shown up. I also want to give you an opportunity to talk about your specific companies, and knowing that the next question talks about that some tech companies have rotational programs or spaces where people can gain experience in product management. Are you able to share if any of your companies have roles that are like that or similar to that?
So Wayfair doesn't have an APM program. That's the Associate Product Management rotational programs that, but a ton of companies do. They're really great programs. So definitely apply to them. Like a lot of the big tech companies do have those. Wayfair does have a few like entry level product roles, although they might not have entry level product roles right now. But what I would say is there's a few roles at Wayfair that there are open. Site merchandising comes to mind, category management, a few others where you can pivot into product from that. But we don't necessarily have an APM program. Yeah, Elizabeth, do you want to kind of, is there anything else?
Yeah, I can definitely jump in there. So my team, there are often entry-level roles in learning and development at Wayfair, which I would highly recommend. Also, a huge way to get started in tech is through recruiting, right? So you come in as a recruiter, and you actually like start to understand the skill set of the folks you're recruiting for. I've seen some folks transfer from recruiting to product design, from recruiting to being engineers, from recruiting to what have you. So if you enjoy talking to people and you enjoy the sort of sales element of recruiting, I highly recommend it. And almost it's a curious landscape right now, but recruiters are always in demand. I'll also say that if you're interested in talent and the space I'm working in, my team will have a couple of roles opening up in the next quarter or two. So feel free to stay in touch. They'll definitely be more on like the admin project side, but there's a ton of growth potential there. We serve a engineering tech population of about 3,500 people. So there's tons of work to be done. So yeah, that's just like a little personal plug because I need the help.
So my company is really small. I would say if you are starting out your careers, I would really aim, obviously I'm biased because I had this specific experience. I would aim to work at a larger company where you can develop through a program. That has been really useful for me for the reasons I mentioned before in developing my analytical and professional framework, but also leaning on that name brand as you pivot. So when I said sayonara to finance, I was able to leverage that experience and that JP Morgan name to add credibility to myself, having not had much experience despite having 1 year. So if you're able to push and pursue a career in a rotational program, definitely take it, especially at Wayfair, especially at these bigger companies where they can develop people. Small companies like Insurify, we're not hiring people with 1 to 2 years of experience. We would be hiring someone that has had experience in leading a team, having actionable growth at another company is really who we're looking for.
Great, awesome. Thank you all for sharing. I really like this next question because you've all talked about your own kind of like job moves and kind of moving from one position to another. And as you look back on that, how do you know that that was the right moment to start to leave a position, to start searching for a new one? How do you assess that job satisfaction that feels elusive at times?
Yeah.
And I can jump in are you ready to go? Go for it.
You go because I'm still mulling it over.
So this isn't quite an answer to how I knew. I knew when I was like at the end of my rope with each role I was in, which is not a healthy way to find a new job, right? It's just not, right? Looking for something when you're upset or frustrated or having a hard time means that you compromise. And it means that oftentimes you're actually not doing a great job at the job you're leaving. And I don't mean that to offend anyone here. I know you're all extremely high performers, but I guarantee you if you're unhappy, you're probably not doing your best work, right? So one of my newest recent mentors whom I adore, so I'm named Elise, she applies for, and I think you'll probably remember Elise Newmeyer. I don't know if you remember her. She was a TSVP. She worked in talent at Wayfair. She recently left to lead people ops for a small startup, but she just would apply for jobs all the time, like just cuz. So she'd like scan LinkedIn every couple months and like pop her resume in, have conversations. And when she told me that, I thought it was crazy, right? Like, how could you be doing that? What if someone found out? And she's like, well, it's my right to do that, right? I'm allowed to do it when I'm unhappy and want a new job. So why wouldn't I be able to do it now? And it's not something I've yet tried, though I have certainly considered it. But I think it's a good thing to keep in mind. Like, update your resume every month, right? Sit down for 30 minutes and write down the things that you've done recently, the things that you're excited about, the things that you would want to tell a potential employer. That makes the pivot when you're at the hard point way easier, right? When you have done a job for 2 years and have not opened your resume and maybe it's in a PDF form and you don't even have the original doc, like that's not a fun time and you're just gonna put it off. So if you are interested in or in the process of making, like wanting to make a pivot, just start to think about the things you've done and make it easier on yourself, because transitions are hard and they're even harder when there are tiny little roadblocks like resumes and awkwardness of new interviews, etc. So maybe you don't go as far as Elise and apply for jobs all the time, but don't be hesitant to understand the landscape of where you might end up one day.
Yeah, I think that kind of covered it. I was the same way that Elizabeth was saying, where when I finally applied to jobs, I probably had been thinking about applying to jobs honestly for a year, which is a long time if you think about it. But I think it's because there's that like hurdle to do it. So I don't know that I did it correctly, but I think the reason why I ended up doing it honestly was because I would talk to people about how work was going, and I just wasn't jazzed about it. And I think that's the biggest hint. One thing I will say is that it's the obvious answer is to leave when you're not happy. And I actually don't agree with that, because there's plenty of times where you're unhappy at work, and the answer is to figure out what to do to make yourself happy at work. Getting a new job isn't necessarily going to solve it. And I certainly know people who bounce from job to job or team to team because they're not happy, but then they never kind of fix that. So I think one thing I would say it's not when you're no longer happy. It's when you're kind of no longer care, and you're not growing and learning and stuff like that.
Yeah, I would say so the 2 times I've left roles, the first being from finance to an operations role in a tech company, was largely driven by dissatisfaction that I noticed essentially that third-year analysts were doing the exact same thing I was doing, just faster. And I did not see myself being satisfied professionally, personally, putting in the hours from 7 to 11 to 1 a.m. at night, doing the same thing over and over again. So when you hit a wall of saying, can I see myself doing this for 3 years? Is there growth? And there's not, you need to look for a job. My second career in running the operations team for a ride sharing company, I sort of hit a ceiling of opportunity. The people that I that were leading me were not offering me the amount of I guess like not necessarily like resources. That sounds strange, but I didn't see the growth potential in the company, nor was I going to be able to exercise any new skills with them. So that was when I pursued a new company. And I would, as I hop to my next statement, which is not really relevant to this question, if you all are considering you're fascinated by Silicon Valley is a great show on TV, you want to work at a startup, I would focus less, and this has been my advice to Wellesley people as I've spoken with them, is focus less on the product, because the product is irrelevant. Focus on the leaders of the company. Focus on who you're going to work with and who you're going to learn from and who is going to mentor you. So if you asked me when I was leaving finance, if I would go back into financial services and work in insurance, I would say you're insane. But I chose Insurify because of the founder. I chose Insurify because of Snezina and the opportunity I had to work for a woman's own business who is a mother, who's an MIT Sloan grad, who is an immigrant, who has this amazing experience that she's willing to teach me how to lead a company. That's why I chose Insurify. So if you're interested in a startup, it doesn't have to be a cool startup about toothbrushes. It could be that, but it could also be a third-party data platform that you know nothing about, but you're inspired by a leader. Also, Quip is a cool company, no slight to that. Really cool tech company, but be open to the product.
That's awesome. I love all of that advice, and I'm mindful that we're at time, and I want to be respectful of kind of like your evenings. So the final question is sort of like any last minute advice, tips, things that you wanted to make sure that you shared to this group in this hour, that you want to end on that note.
Make a LinkedIn account tonight. Make it nice. Proofread it. Proofread every email you send. Save it in your drafts. Get a water. Come back. Proofread it again. Guarantee you there's going to be an error in it, and I guarantee you someone like me is going to read it and be turned off. So be mindful of that. And I also will say again and again, network. So make your LinkedIn profile, get some water, proofread it, come back, proofread it, then blast everyone in the Wellesley network. If you think you're super inspired to pursue talent like Elizabeth, do that. Message people, ask them for their time, learn from them. And then, by the way, are you hiring? That's not annoying. That's flattering. People love to talk about themselves like I do. We all do. Ask people for their time tailored to them, but then follow up.
To kind of piggyback on that, network to like build your own opportunities, but realize that you also have the power to help other people along too. I think especially early career, you're so focused on like getting yourself somewhere that you don't realize that you might have something that could help a fellow alum along, or you know, someone who's also new career who might be outside your network. The fastest way to build your network is to be networking for other people too, right? Because when you become a dependable resource, someone wants to help you out down the line. So don't think that you don't have the ability to offer something just because you're new in your career or you're younger. That's huge. So do it for each other, like lift each other up is my big thing.
Yeah, I have two things. One is my hunch is that right now a lot of you are feeling like, or maybe you do have an internship, in which case kudos, but maybe you're feeling like you're looking for something and you're not going to be able to find it. And it's always easier in 2020 hindsight to be like, that was really tough, but hey, it all worked out. And I know this is like kind of corny, but it's actually true because it really does always work out. I can't tell you, like senior year, all of my Wellesley friends were freaking out about getting jobs. And some graduated without jobs and they were freaking out, and everybody ended up with a job that they liked or were learning from, or maybe it like led them to another job. But either way, nobody graduated and within like 3 months didn't have something. They like, it all works out. You just kind of have to keep plugging away. But I acknowledge that it's really, really hard when you're in the middle of that to see that. But just kind of reassure yourself that like, it's okay, it's discouraging, you apply to stuff anyways, that sort of thing. So that's one thing. And the other thing is like, it's a +1 and then it's an add-on to the network thing, because I remember hearing the advice when I was in college around networking, and I always felt like, but I don't have a network. Like my parents aren't in tech, they weren't really in an industry that I wanted to be in, and that's how I read the word network. But you all have a network. It's Wellesley, and there's like, I consistently kind of have dropped the ball on the Wellesley network in my career. A really good example is when I applied to Wayfair. There are there's 20 Wayfair Wellesley alums at Wayfair, but 20, that's a lot. And I remember I applied and I got through the interview process, and then after getting the job, I reached out to Alex Poon, who's an alum, and he was like, dude, why didn't you tell me that you were interviewing this entire time? Like, I could have helped you, but I waited until the end because I didn't actually know Alex that well. We just happened to both be on campus and we never actually talked. So I think that all that is to say is you have a network, and the network wants to help you, especially if you're reaching out kind of in the right way, which kind of Hayden went over before. But so those are the two last things that I have.
Also, just a secret, most tech companies incentivize referrals, right? Like, we get extra money if our people get hired, okay? So like, don't be afraid. If you see that there's a Wellesley alum at the company or work you want to apply to, let them know. They will be, one, just as excited because obviously the Wellesley connection is very strong and we're all really excited to be around each other all the time. But two, oftentimes there's monetary incentive. So like, if we're being honest, it's a thing, so.
It also makes the person look really good, right? So if you bring in good talent to the company, it raises your own status in the company as being connected to a talent pipeline. Like, that's really valuable.
Hugely so, yeah.
Oh, I totally forgot something that, Anne, I think you mentioned that inspired me to say something, and now I can't remember it. Shoot, it'll come to me. I had something. Yeah. How many of you are sophomores or juniors? Any of you? Okay. I'm not going to put you on the spot right now. If you don't have an internship and you don't have concrete plans, and you live in like a place where you would have the opportunity to work, do something in the summer that is structured. Like, if you're able to work in retail, if you're able to work in a restaurant, if you're able to do something, if you're able to babysit, and have that on your resume, because I guarantee you in a year from now, when you're or a year from last month, when you're interviewing for your junior year summer internship, someone's going to look at that resume without summer experience. They're going to say, what did you do? And if you say, I hung out at the park or by the pool, it's not going to work.
Yeah, and going off of that, it's better to do something like if you're worried about like a job or something like that, and it's tough to balance, it's better to do something, even if it's small, that's like has an output, that's even like doing somebody a favor or something, like even if it's unpaid, but you have like a paid job over here, it's better to do something than it is to do nothing, because enter reason why you can't do it. Like there's always a reason why it's hard. So yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to be a dog walker, you've just created your own company and you have clients. So measure that, put it on your resume, sell it, baby. You're an entrepreneur.
Awesome. And I second that advice. And I'm going to make a quick plug for Career Education. We'll be launching our micro internships program in the next couple of weeks. Knowing that this summer is different, we've reached out to alums and employers who maybe can't hire someone for a full summer because of plans they're trying to make. And they're offering these 2 to 3 week project-based experiences to help students who maybe couldn't find something or having a hard time thinking about what to do with their summer to have one of those really meaningful and structured opportunities to add to their resumes to gain some learning experiences. So keep an eye out for that in the next couple weeks or so. We're hoping to launch that in early June. But I do want to say thank you so much to Anne, Elizabeth, and Hayden. All of your advice has been so helpful. I've learned a lot. I took notes on your books, and we'll be sure to check those out. And I'll send a follow-up email to the participants so that they have those in writing as well, so that they can see the advice that you've given. And I'll also let you know when the recording is up and live, so that those who didn't take quick notes or wants a refresher, they can rewatch this session. But thank you so much for your time, and thank you to everyone who tuned in. We're really excited about these alumni career conversations and hope to continue them in some way, shape, or form this summer.
Thanks, Frances. This is wonderful. Thanks all.
Yeah, this is great. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Good luck. Have a good summer.